Viewer contributions make local programming possible on WNIN. Become a member of WNIN with your contribution so we can continue to make this programming available. Visit WNIN.org and click on the donate button.
The Indiana General Assembly started its long session last month, and we're joined by longtime Indiana State Senator Jim Toms to discuss how the session is shaping up. WNIN Lawmakers starts right now. Welcome to WNIN Lawmakers. I'm John Gibson, news manager for WNIN FM. Before we check in with Senator Toms, here's a report from Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith on what happened in the General Assembly this past week.
Governor Mike Braun's property tax reform proposal received testimony in a Senate committee this week. The plan would roll back homeowners' property tax bills to 2021 levels and cap future increases. Local government leaders are worried it would decimate their budgets and affect public safety, but Braun told leaders to prove it that their budgets aren't bloated with unnecessary spending. Indiana counties currently offer 28 days of early in-person voting before elections. Senate Republicans want to cut that to 14, saying it will help save money. Opponents worry it will further hurt Indiana's already poor voter turnout. And a bill that prohibits civics courses that create a national identity around racial and gender discrimination, victimization, class struggle, privilege, or systemic exclusion got pushback in the Senate committee. Opponents say the bill would prevent teachers from discussing history like segregation or slavery. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the Statehouse.
We're joined now by Indiana State Senator Jim Toms, who represents Posey County and western parts of Vanderburgh County. Good to have you back with us, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Well, this, of course, is a long session at the General Assembly. The budget process, obviously, is the main, or one of the main issues. So when does the Senate expect to see the budget bill from the House?
I haven't no idea on this yet, John. We're still having committee hearings yet on other bills, and so I don't know what the House actually. Well, I'm consumed with what we're doing on the Senate side. So no schedule, no exact date yet.
If there is,
I haven't heard it.
Gotcha. Well, as we mentioned before we went on the air, that there's something like 1,200 bills being considered right now?
I think it was. I don't know how we could get along without them 1,200 bills. We got 12. I think that's what it was.
Yeah. All right. Well, we mentioned in Brandon's preview there, the opener, that Governor Braun's property tax changes are certainly a big issue. There seems to be a lot of concern among some about school funding if the changes are adopted. What are your thoughts on the governor's property tax changes?
Well, I know he offered these ideas, and that bill right now is still undergoing a lot of changes. A lot of amendments is offered, and a lot of discussion on it. I don't know what the outcome, the final product is going to look like, but I know that I've heard stories where some of the locals are fearful that they're going to not have enough money for their budgets. But I think this whole process is going to require not just the state but the locals to be part of the fix on this thing. And some of the things that locals I just hear from is, you know, the money they do get allocated to them. I'm hoping they're using that money properly. Like, for example, right now, with money being tight and their budget, worried about their budgets, I hope that they focus on what's really important in their own particular local communities. Maybe rather than spending money on a bicycle trail, perhaps, or a pickleball court, maybe it would be better invested in infrastructure or road repair or something like that. So I know there's a lot of angst about what's going to happen, but I do want the locals to be responsible.
Well, do you share any of those concerns about, say, local school districts, taking a pretty big hit here?
Well, I know that they're looking at that might be the case, but again, like I say, this bill is not finished yet, and I don't know the things that's been offered up. I don't know if it's going to maintain those propositions or if it's going to change with new amendments coming to it. So it's early to tell exactly what kind of proposal we're going to wind up with as far as property taxes, and that's a big thing. I mean, property taxes and utility rates is the biggest thing right now that I'm getting from people. What I mean, if you had your druthers, how much of a property tax cut would you like to see, or would you? Well, I'd like to see some property tax cut. Absolutely. I mean, folks are just they're struggling out here. Fixed income people are really struggling here, and so I'd like to see some kind of a cut. I have a bill that I offered up that if I can talk about this, and I think the bill number was 206, but it would require a independent audit of all of our state agencies. This was my direction to go. And if we did a very good, thorough, outside, independent audit of our agencies to find out just exactly what every agency is using and doing with the money that they receive, if we find that maybe there's a little bit of spending that needs to be controlled, and we roll that back and seal up any money leaks we're having through these agencies. I'm not saying there is, but there could be. And if that would be the case, we might find out that the tax revenue money we're bringing in is more than what we really need. You understand my theory? So in other words, an independent panel would study all this. And then if we find out that we're spending way more than we need to be because it was not properly spent, and we seal those leaks up, maybe we can actually eliminate a tax even. That's the proposal in this bill. I don't know if it's going to get a hearing or not. It's in a committee, appropriations. The governor supports me on this measure, but I'm thinking before we talk about cutting, why don't we find out if we have money that's getting away from us? And that would give us a little room then to actually do some significant tax reduction. Well, let's talk about another tax bill here that has in fact passed the state Senate unanimously, Senate Bill 451. It would continue to reduce the income tax past the current 5-year reduction plan. I understand you support that idea. Yeah. Why do you think that's necessary? Well, that's a good effort right there to reduce taxes, and so I think it's a good bill. I think it's got benefits to it, and I'm hoping that it'll go through the House and that we make a significant change on our tax law. All right, well, let's talk about some of the other voting bills that the Senate has taken up so far this year. As we mentioned, there's been a bunch. Senate Bill 355, this one's been getting some attention. It would move municipal elections to even years, which would align more with the federal elections, the presidential elections, et cetera. It is headed to the full Senate now for a vote. What do you think about moving the municipal elections? Well, I think it saves the locals on the cost of the election off here. And also, I think one of the main points on that was that there's more voter turnout in those general elections, and it would probably be a good thing to institute. I think that way we'd have more votes, more voters involved in it, and I think that would be beneficial myself. Yeah, so in other words, aligning it with, as we've seen in the past, municipal elections, often the voter turnout is usually lower than it is for a presidential election. Yeah. Right. All right, well, let's talk about another issue involving voting. This Senate Bill 284, it would cut the number of early voting days in half. Now, I understand you've co-authored this particular measure. Why do you think we need to reduce that early voting time? Well, I would like to go back to where you had one day you vote, but that's not going to happen, I guess. I don't know. But I think it'd be nice to trim it back to where we don't have it strung out so much. I don't know why we do that, but that's been a policy, and I think it's a good measure. I support it. Yeah, well, what would be the benefit, I guess, of narrowing it down to less than what we're doing now? Well, I just think it streamlines it rather than have it that many days out. I just think it would be beneficial. I don't know all the talking points on it. I do support the bill. My name's on the bill. I don't remember who was the author of that bill. Was it? I don't believe I've got that here. Okay. So we're both in the dark on that one. But I don't see anything wrong with that myself. Okay. I think it's, all right. Well, let's go on to yet another election-related bill, Senate Bill 201. It would require a person to be registered in the party of the primary they vote in.
Currently, people can vote in primaries without being registered in that party. It has passed committee and is headed to the full Senate. What are your thoughts on that measure?
I like that idea. I think that would help. I know we have crossover voting and stuff in these primaries, and it can be confusing, and sometimes it can skew an election. And I think this measure here will take care of that.
Well, let's move on to yet another bill that's been getting quite a bit of attention, again, related to elections and such. It's Senate Bill 10. As I understand, it would ban the use of student IDs as a voter identification when voting. You voted in favor of the measure, I should say. Now, current law requires that student IDs be from a state school and have a photo, name, and expiration date. Why do you think student ID should not be allowed as a...
Well, as Senator Dorio's bill, and I think what he's trying to do is see to it that the documents that you would have to show when you vote would be an authentic document, one that substantiates who you really are. And I think that's the primary focus on that.
Is there a problem with that, though?
Apparently, I don't know. Maybe in his area it might have been. I haven't seen it down here, but across the state, maybe there's some area of the state. I think he's up near the South Bend area, so I don't know if it's been a particular problem there in that part of the state. But anyway, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think
Okay, well, let's move on to some other things here. Lots of issues, as we've talked about. This is Senate Bill 11. It would require parental permission for anyone under the age of 16 to use social media. I understand you voted for this bill when it passed the Indiana Senate. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Well, social media is a very powerful instrument, and young ages can get themselves in trouble on this. I had a bill a couple years ago that would have the schools to give a little curriculum on the dangers of being on the internet, taking dares and challenges, which results in sometimes death in some of these challenges they take. So I think sometimes maybe it would be the proper thing to do is have the parents be the authority that would kind of watch over their children on what they're exposed to.
Any issues there with free speech as you see it? I mean, again, the date or the age being 16?
I don't think so. I know we could be splitting hairs about that, but I don't. At some point, when does an adult become an adult? Right. Not 16. So.
All right. Well, let's move on to many other bills that are happening up there, as we mentioned. Senate Bill 143. It passed the Senate by a big margin this week. It allows parents to sue government entities if they feel their rights have been violated. You voted in favor of this bill. Can you tell us a little more about it and why you voted for it?
I voted for the bill. I don't know all of the details. Who was the sponsor on that?
The sponsor I don't have in front of me. Senate Bill 143. Yeah. I understand it. Yeah, it passed with some bipartisan support, I believe. Yeah. And parents, it would allow parents to sue government entities if they feel their rights have been violated.
Well, occasionally, government does overstep its authority, and it can prevent somebody from speaking up. Maybe it could be in a council meeting or something like that, that they're denied their opportunity to speak. And we've seen this occasions over the years where law enforcement brought in, a parent could be, or an individual is arrested, hauled out, and they're just simply trying to get their message across or get a question answered. So there's got to be some kind of a alternative for a person to be able to, if they're denied their opportunity to say something, there's got to be something, some way or another to get.
I guess some might say that government meetings, as you say, I mean, you've got to keep some kind of decorum. There usually is an officer there to keep things peaceful. So, where do you draw those lines?
Well, it's a balance. Yeah, it's a balance, and attitude and behavior is part of that. If you're respectfully trying to introduce your question or get an answer, but if you get rowdy, then you're over the line. So there's got to be a balance, and maybe occasionally there's maybe someone has stepped over the line, either the government or the person. It depends, but it's one of those measures that comes up. Somebody's trying to fix a problem that surfaces occasionally.
All right, well, let's move on to an issue that has been getting lots of attention nationwide. Here in Indiana, Senate Bill 235 has passed the committee and is headed to the full Senate, and it would ban diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at state agencies, educational institutions, and any organization that receives money from the state. Now, you signed on as a co-author. Why do you think this is an important
Well, it is
measure?
important, and that bill was actually why we were late getting out of the Senate last night, because that bill passed the Senate last night. But that program is not equitable, and it's not inclusive, and it's a bad practice. And I'm glad to see that Indiana has taken this initiative, because what we want to be here in this state is fair to everybody, and everybody's treated equally. But you can establish a program such as this that could be biased against some groups. It can be that. And this has been proven. And in the discussion, we've seen things that's happened. I think one of the senators testified that a student that he knew was in med school and just wasn't allowed to pursue his classes like he was wanted, and he wasn't treated fairly, and this program was one of the aspects that caused that problem for that particular student. So I think this is nobody's going to be harmed. I looked at the bill, listened to the discussion on the bill. It went long last night, but the bill was well thought out, and no one's going to be deprived of anything. If we do away with this, they will not be deprived. But what we will have is a fair and equal opportunity for everyone, whether you're applying for a job or you're going to school or whatever it might be. You're treated equally. And
well, obviously, the goal of these programs is to exactly allow equity and inclusion and diversity in everyone. So you know, who is being hurt by these?
Well, there was people. And I wasn't in the committees where this bill was brought up. I was just on the Senate floor yesterday. But this could be used and has been used, according to the testimony we heard, where it was used against people. And we don't need programs that can also become a weapon in some respects. And so I think that what we're trying to do here in Indiana is see to it that all of our citizens have a fair chance at a job. They have a fair chance of an education. They have a fair chance in life, and not have maybe some group has this program that they can use to their advantage, to the disadvantage of someone else. And that's a fact.
Well, so what groups, as you see it,
are I won't name groups, but it happens across the state. It happens across the country. We're seeing it now at the national level. This has become an issue as well. But it was treated as though it's going to be horrible if we do this. It won't be horrible. I don't think it will be horrible.
All right. Well, let's move on to some other issues happening at the Statehouse. A couple of Senate bills, 423 and 424, talk about the use of small modular nuclear reactors. I know it sounds like almost a science fiction kind of a thing, but they would help feed the power needs of, say, tech companies, which I understand the state certainly wants to attract. Now, these measures have passed the state Senate, but you voted against them.
I sure did.
Why did you say no to these?
I didn't just vote against them, I spoke against them.
Okay.
I love the technology. I'm all for that. That's great. Now, I am a coal guy myself, but I think it's a great technology. But the way this is set up is that any entity that wants to get into this, either the production of it, the development of it, the cost all comes to bear on the ratepayer, every nickel and dime, in advance, up 80%, and then 20% later, the utility comes back to the IURC to get that 20% paid as well. And that's why I spoke against the bill. Because, John, in this area, you well know, the people here have been frustrated with overbearing costs on their utilities as it is. And I will not, and I asked the question, who shares the burden of this cost? And it was told to me, the ratepayer. I won't support this anymore. The ratepayers are pinned down, they're backed against the wall. And in a project like this, if they start one of these projects and it fails to complete, that's it. The ratepayers don't get their money back. That was brought up in the testimony. The technology is great, but the application on the cost of the development of the program and also the rates on how they will come to bear is all on the ratepayer, and I won't do it.
All right.
If they can fix that part,
Right.
let the companies be a little bit involved, where they, whether they're stockholders or the company themselves share some of the
If they were
cost.
to ante up more.
Doggone right.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of of energy prices, just Thursday evening, we learned about the amount of the increase coming to CenterPoint customers. I'm sure many customers in your district use CenterPoint. Is there anything more that the state can do to try to reduce these amounts, reduce these increases that seem to come along very frequently?
I know they do. I think it's going to be like $35. Am I right, somewhere in that neighborhood?
Initially a $7, and then the next year it'll be a $26 hike per month.
35.
Yeah.
There was a time, John, that our utility bill was $35.
Right.
And I support the utilities. They provide the energy that we all enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know what we can do when these companies have no restrictions. They're not obligated.
Right.
We have the IURC, but I got to tell you, it's rare. Nothing comes to mind where the IURC has ever ruled in favor of the ratepayer. Maybe they have, and if that's the case, I apologize for condemning them when they're not guilty. But generally speaking, the IURC normally grants them their rate increases or whatever increases they want. The people I'm talking about, the everyday citizen, yourself, people who's on fixed income, folks that are, their car gas tank needle might be pointing to empty for the past 2 days, and they're trying to figure out if they're going to have money for medicine or food. I'm saying we got to have a little break here. We got to get some relief for our citizens.
You mentioned the IURC, that's the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the folks who are on that commission right now I believe the governor will have an opportunity to appoint some new members. You have any message for the governor in that process?
Yeah, I do. I would suggest, instead of appointing them, we would initiate the process to have them elected. Maybe, I think there's 5-member board.
Right.
Two in the northern end of the state, 2 in the southern end, 1 in the middle. We can start this process this year, next year, where 2 are elected, and formulate it. So when will the next 2 come up for election, and after that, the last one elected? And then that would cycle. However many years we determine, each one would hold that seat. I think people can apply. If they're qualified, they can show their qualifications. The citizens can vote for the person who's going to dictate what their rates are going to be. That I think we could do. I think we should do. Now, some may say that's outrageous. I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see if that idea gains some traction. We've got just a few minutes left, and I know you've authored quite a few bills this session.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of them and where they are in the process in this last couple of minutes.
I'm glad you're going to give me a little time to talk about my bills. Yes.
Yeah,
one was about the jamming devices. Last summer, we seen what happened here in Evansville when these residents come home in the middle of the day, and there was 2 individuals robbing their homes. One bolted out of the back when they come up on them, the other one got in the car and drove off. Their security devices, nothing went off, nothing triggered. And later in the day, when the deputy sheriff, Vanderbilt County Sheriff, come up on this car and pulled him over, when he pulled up behind the car, his computer in his car went down, and so did his communication devices getting back to radio for help. These devices you can buy from China for about $150, about the size of a cell phone. And you can use them to neutralize a security system.
So basically, it jams up things like radios and
phones.
Yeah.
So anyway, the bill passed. There's a penalty for it, a prohibition to it, and it passed out of the Senate unanimously. Democrats, Republicans all voted for this measure. It goes in the House. And one other bill that I want to speak, if I've got the time, is the street takeovers. Do you know what that is?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, Indianapolis and big cities across the country has been dealing with this thing. We're at night, late night, early morning hours, there will be a group of people in their cars, maybe 100 cars sometimes at a time, where they completely overtake a street intersection. Usually it's a main intersection downtown area. A lot of people lined up along the sidewalks, and they spend their cars in circles, spinning their tires around and around circular motions, and multiple cars there. People can get hit by these cars. They can have wrecks. No one can get through. I mean, if you're a late-night worker trying to get to work, you couldn't get. Emergency vehicles couldn't get through. Even the last episode I seen in Indianapolis, when the police got there, they attacked the police and also the squad cars. This bill puts a penalty on that, and it eliminates that, so that we don't have that kind of a nonsense goes on. If these guys, and these are high-performance cars, by the way.
Sure.
If they want to race, we got drag strips all over the state of Indiana. Take it there and race, right?
Now, are there not existing laws, though, that would take care of this kind of thing?
Apparently not, because there's one of the penalties, if they injure somebody or damage something, the main draw on that is they can seize their car. Now, I'm a car guy. And I wouldn't do this to my car. I wouldn't take the chance of putting a scratch on the fender of my car. So I certainly wouldn't want it seized. So if we can do something like that, I know that the chief of police up in Indianapolis is happy with this bill, and it gives the law enforcement some leverage on not just flushing them out and making them go away or some other area, but, you know, you do something like this, you could fall over to the point where you could lose your car. And I don't know. Sometimes government is always chasing behind. Someone will come up with a new thing to cause trouble, and then when somebody else has to come up with a bill or a law for it, right? That's the way it works.
Now, is that measure?
That one passed too, all but one vote out of the Senate. So,
all right, so on to the House.
They're looking good. So people are fed up with it. They're just tired of that nonsense. So.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks again for being with us this week, Senator Thomas. We always appreciate your time. Next week, our scheduled guests are Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith and Indiana State Senator Vanita Becker. I'm John Gibson, News Manager for WNIN FM. Thank you so much for watching WNIN Lawmakers.